Alright guys, welcome back to another video. I genuinely want to say thanks to everybody who watched the previous video on Crimson Desert. That's definitely pushed me to want to make more of these videos, just talking about gaming, talking about games that I'm pretty passionate about, talking about the Western game industry, the Eastern game industry, and everything in between. I guess the culture war that's going on, but more just sharing a passion of gaming, you know, past, present, future, all these things. I don't want to be completely negative on everything. Just kind of producing my thoughts, but I don't want to get too long-winded. As you guys will get to know me, I tend to do that, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who supported that previous video. So this is kind of a follow-up, kind of a long time coming. Probably should have put this video out a little longer, a little while ago, but here we are. So yeah, let's get into it. So like I mentioned before, this is essentially a follow-up to my previous video about Crimson Desert, which in the grand scheme of things, it was more about kind of a video essay on the current state of gaming when it comes to the gaming companies, you know, where they're based in, you know, if it's a Japanese studio, Korean studio, what they're putting out compared to, let's just say, an American studio, European studio, Australian studio. In my opinion, you know, the Japanese and Korean specifically are just putting out better products. And I don't think that Crimson Desert has been a change in that philosophy or that viewpoint. So we know now that Crimson Desert has sold officially 3 million copies. Keyword sold 3 million copies, which is absolutely phenomenal for a first-time IP. Obviously, Pearl Abyss, they've already done games like Black Desert Online, which has you know, garnered a lot of players, but that was an MMO, completely different franchise, different game. This is a completely new IP. Crimson Desert was based on kind of a Black Desert follow-up, but they ended up scrapping a lot of their ideas and converted it into a single-player open-world game that we see today. So the game is doing great, doing amazing. You know, there were definitely some people who, you know, went after the game right away. You had journalists, you had people talking about, oh, well, you know, the stock went down 30%. You know, they're losing money, and the score for the journalists are in the 70s. You know, this game is not gonna do as well as everyone thought it was. You know, just because it's a Asian-made game, you know, that doesn't mean it's gonna be successful. Well, the numbers are in, and this game's a banger. It is not universally praised, and nothing should be universally praised except for, you know, Jesus himself. But once again, it goes to show you that players are what matter. Journalists in 2026's opinion are not to be taken extraordinarily seriously. If you're interested in an opinion about a game that you want to purchase, especially with your hard-earned money, especially if it's a $70 game like Crimson Desert, you absolutely should seek out information for something like that, because games are extraordinarily expensive in this economy, and no longer are the days where you should be going over to GameSpot or IGN. There's a bevy of content creators out here, not even including myself, who you can go to get an honest, well-to-do opinion about a game that you're going to go purchase. And the players that have played specifically for, at the very least, 20, 30, 40 hours are rating the game very highly. It went from a mixed review on Steam to mostly positive fairly quickly over the weekend, and the game is already seeing, you know, great numbers, sales, like I mentioned, players through the roof, and most importantly, Pearl Abyss has fixed a lot of things that people have been, you know, have an issue about. There's still things about the game. There's still work to be done regarding patches. The big thing around it was the Intel GPU debacle, where, you know, Intel architecture on the GPU side was not being supported. So if you purchased the game and you had an Intel build GPU or some sort of Intel portable PC, your game would not load. Your game would not start, and you'd be left with having to get a refund. And that's definitely not a good look for any kind of company, to completely neglect any customers that have a you know, a system that should be able to play the game. So according to Pearl Abyss, though, they're rectifying that situation, so that's great to see, and the game is doing great. And the big thing is, again, it's 3 million sold. I've been noticing this pattern as well, where games that tend to do well, they use the term sold, and other companies tend to use the term players. So what does it mean between sold and players? So the difference between sold and players definitely lies within the revenue and the success of the game, and trying to be misleading on the success of your game to try to drive more people to play your piss poor game, especially if you can only provide the player numbers. So what does that mean? So if you look at games like Abound, or if you look at games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, these types of games, again, from Western studios, that had previously amazing titles and have a legacy, have a pedigree of very well done, very well crafted games in the open world pantheon genre of video games. These companies use the term players. So I'm not a financial analyst myself, but I know that when you have a end of the year financial report or a quarterly year report, I don't think that stock investors or investors in a company are interested in the total players. They want to know revenue, and they want to know the amount of copies sold, so they know they're going to get a return on their investment. And from what I've seen a lot taking place that I never saw before, I never saw this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is that companies are hiding their sales figures because they know that people like myself, or obviously, people who are, doing their little investigations, they're going to find out that these companies are not as successful as they try to portray themselves to be. And they use the player number as a way to inflate and mislead potential customers to get them to purchase their product without taking a look under the hood and saying, so you can't really get people to buy your product at full price. So what they do is that they use things like Game Pass players, PlayStation Plus players, things like that, where people aren't actually paying with their hard-earned money. They're not spending 60, 70, sometimes upwards of 80, 90 to over $100 for these deluxe or collector's editions. People aren't actually spending that kind of money. They're getting these games in the bargain bin. They're getting these games on Game Pass. They're getting these games through some sort of streaming metric, and they're using that in a misleading way. Companies have been doing this quite frequently, and it's actually very frustrating and annoying, and it's just something that I just want to point out. And I want to make sure you praise the companies that actually produce true numbers, real numbers, even when it's not exactly the most glamorous numbers to be producing. I think it's extraordinarily important that these companies produce real numbers and honest figures so that potential customers can be informed about the quality of the product they're purchasing. And just in general, I mean, as a business, you should want to take pride in an honest reporting of how well your product is doing. And if your product is not hitting the expectations or sales numbers that you want to hit, then it's time to go back to the drawing board and maybe go back and find some either better game designers, better creative designers, or you need to go through and fire some people in the C-suite who aren't allowing your game developers to produce a product that is going to sell with your reported and loyal customer. It seems very apparent when you got a game that has its flaws, and Crimson Desert has its flaws for sure. The game needs updates, like I mentioned. The game's controls are very wonky and very off-putting to a lot of players. But when you don't have any of your identity politics, you have a game that has a lot of content on release, no DLC on release, no mention of DLC in the near future. You sell a game full price, over 200 hours, and the player base is fervently and excited to get into the game 30, 40, 50 plus hours in. Most people who are playing Crimson Desert experience this initial mixed response, especially in the early points of the game. But if you're paying $70 and your players are excited to play after about 60 hours and are saying that they're not even 30% done with the map in an open world game in these days, then you've got a great product on your hands. And I think Pearl Abyss has a slam dunk here. The game's only going to get better from here. And I think that the Western developers, they need to take a good look at what's happening with Pearl Abyss and some of the other companies that we've mentioned in the past, and take a note from them, because we've got games like Fable coming out. And if you guys in the comments section, if you guys think that Fable is going to sell as well as Pearl Abyss, I'd like you to give me a sales figure. If Pearl Abyss was able to sell 3 million copies in less than a week, how many copies do you think Fable is going to be able to sell when it releases in a couple months? I'd love to hear you guys in the comments to see if we think that Fable is going to sell more than Crimson Desert in a 5-day period, so we'll be able to go back and take a look. That's about all I've got today, guys. We'll do more videos and follow-ups, and we'll be talking about other games, not just Crimson Desert. I'm really excited to start talking about all kinds of games, all kinds of topics in the future. But yeah, guys, that's about it. Don't forget to drop a like and a subscribe, and thank you very much, guys. We hit 100 subscribers. We pulled in a good amount of subscribers in the last couple of weeks, so I really appreciate that. The videos will be coming, and make sure you guys have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and I will be talking to you soon.